sluggishly, but that's okay because it's Saturday. We have a huge sports Saturday coming up. You've got the second round of golf, you've got NFL, you've got NHL, and of course, NBA. We are the Osmo DFS strategy show, and we'll be covering the NBA for you today. We will be looking at the 6-game main slate. We will be going through things game by game. I'm joined by Adam Ship My Money Share. And Adam, it was an interesting night last night. We had triple doubles from James Harden, Ben Simmons, Luka Doncic almost got there, and Tomas Satoransky, of all people, probably the best play of the night. 54 points, coming in at 5,300, unless you want to count Royce O'Neal. Speaking of Royce, sounds like we're going to talk about him today. How did your evening go?
Not great. Just one of those nights where normally when all the chalk hits, I'm not gonna have a good night. So kind of live with it and move on to the next day.
We live to fight another day. In honor of my 4 Mountain Dews yesterday morning, I'm wearing my Mountain Dew t-shirt today. And I do have a Mountain Dew in my glass. So I'm only on number 3, and I will cut it off at 3 today. 4 yesterday was plenty. What is your coffee or caffeine of choice in the morning?
Normally coffee, nothing today though.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump on in. We'll hit the injuries as we get to them. We've, of course, I've got ownership projections. I've run crunches for the 3 big sites. For those of you that have not gotten into the Yahoo $250,000 contest, it filled. So you're going to have to play in some of their secondary contests, but we do have free content on the front page of Osmo.com covering that. If you sign up for your account and make your first DFS deposit, even if you already have an account, if you haven't made a DFS deposit, you can do so. Use the promo code Osmo and you'll get $30 matched to your first 30 of your deposit. That will be in Yahoo player points, which are usable immediately in any contest. All right, Adam, let's see here. Let me do a double check on the Twitter link here and see if we're going out. But in the meantime, let's start off on our first game here. Should be, I don't know that fun is the operative word, but it's Boston and Orlando. Start off here with the Boston side. What do you think about Kyrie Irving in this matchup?
Yeah, so I mean, Kyrie, it feels like kind of saying the same thing every day about Kyrie, where he's at a price point where he has upside, but where he also does not project as, like a top play on the slate at his position. So normally I don't really end up getting too much of him. This is an Orlando team that, while they're not a good team, they are relatively decent defensively. They don't play that fast. So it's not a bad spot for Kyrie, but it's not a super appealing spot either. I'll be fine with whatever Kyrie I get, but I don't imagine he'll end up being a priority for me on this slate.
All right. Anybody at all here from Boston as we look around? This feels like one of the games where I'm not really enthralled to have anybody on it, but we only have 6 today, so I hate to just kick one to the curb this early. Perhaps maybe a bench player or two, a reserve looking at a 7.5 favorite here for Boston in Orlando. We know that Mo Bamba is dinged up in this one, so it's not looking exciting here for the Magic. Anybody in the tertiary section for Boston?
For Boston, though, I mean, it's just a team that when they're healthy, they're pretty much priced correctly. They've been underpriced on FanDuel. I have DraftKings pricing in front of me right now. I'm trying to get FanDuel's up. So potentially liking Boston guys more on FanDuel. On DraftKings, though, the pricing, is pretty much correct. Pulling up FanDuel now, and Kyrie. So Kyrie's 8,300 on FanDuel. Marcus Morris is 4,800. Those are both guys that were very popular last slate. They'll probably be popular again today, and I think they are a little bit underpriced. So more of a site-dependent play. Jason Tatum as well at 6,100 on FanDuel is fine. On DraftKings, though, they just stand out a little bit less.
All right, let's cruise on over here to the other side. We have Nikolai Vucevic, who's actually done relatively well in his history going against Al Horford and Boston. He is someone that is on my short list, but basically for tournaments only, and I think he's really going to come into play if Karl Anthony Towns ends up being out. He was dinged up last night. We'll talk about more when we get there. But if you're looking for someone to kind of shift away from, if Karl Anthony Towns is out and you don't want to go to Anthony Davis, then I think Vucevic is someone that you can give some consideration to here. Do you like him? We talked about a very, very discounted Evan Fournier on DraftKings, who had 37 minutes and 2.5 DraftKings points in his last game. Talk to me a little bit here about the Magic.
Yeah, I think the Vucevic price on DraftKings in particular is nice at 8,800. Just, tons of upside from there. Boston's a good team defensively, no doubt about that. But Vucevic is just kind of this entire Orlando offense. He scores, he picks up assists, he rebounds. He's one of those guys that has rates north of 20% in all three of those categories. And with Bamba out, you potentially see a couple more minutes for Vucevic as well. So I do like him. Again, he's more interesting if Cat sits. Obviously, it just makes the position thinner. But I think a couple more minutes.
Sorry,
what did you say?
Oh no, that was you talking on a delay. I was just seeing if I could get this tweet to go out. You don't recognize your own voice, Adam. Come on.
I think Vucevic is a good play. The Fournier price tag on DraftKings, he's really unappealing. It's an unappealing spot, but as you mentioned, it's a 6-game slate, so $4,700 for Evan Fournier probably doesn't hurt you too often.
I like how you say that hesitantly. Too often? I don't know. It's tempting, and Fournier is someone that haven't really been looking for, especially since he lost the little man bun. The all hair team there with Elfrid Payton and Evan Fournier was something to behold. He's just kind of settled into a homeless man's version of Manu Ginobili, it seems like, at this point. Only the hair game, as well as his on-court performance. But this is just one of those kind of not very appealing games. One guy that I did see coming up in the crunches is DJ Augustine. So if you're, focusing on a little differentiation, he's going to pop up there on DraftKings. You're also getting here Jonathan Isaacs coming in at about 20%. He is coming in because he's 3,600. Anything else here from the Orlando bench? And the one thing I did want to point out for Isaac, his minutes have been solid. He's starting, but he's not shooting, which is a problem. He hasn't taken more than 7 shots since December 28th. That's a little bit frustrating, but he is 3,600. We have to give that consideration if you don't want to go with the Royce O'Neal experience.
Yeah, certainly can look to those guys as, for, I guess, lack of a better phrase, like glue guys for your lineup on a 6-game slate, but certainly not guys that I'm expecting anything great from.
Yes. Former person I hosted a few shows with once upon a time. You may have heard of him, Crazy Gaby. I like to call those guys stud lubricant because it enabled you to work in the studs to your lineup. I'm just the messenger. That was not my creation. Although I did see that you found me on the internet, Adam, with my new job, writing traffic notifications. How did you stumble across that one? I'm going to post that link in chat here for everybody to get a nice laugh.
Someone else I follow retweeted it and said that she thought her dad had wrote it.
So for those of you there, it's the I guess Maryland highway. We called it VDOT down here, it's Department of Transportation here in Virginia. But it says the NFL playoffs are at 4:30 and 8:15. They're ideally timed with the snow. Stand and watch football while we clear the roads. Wait for it. Your chief responsibility is to stay out of the cold weather. Don't go out there driving like a cowboy, or you might ram another car. Don't worry, we're on it. That's brilliant. I'm honored that you thought of me.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that. All right, let's get on to our second game here. This is the fun one. This is the double overtime rematch that we have here. It is the San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City Thunder. This time they're in OKC. We saw the double overtime game scored combined for 301 points. That was, I think, if I remember correctly, like the first time two teams have combined for that many points since like 2007, also in a multi-overtime game. But that one was pretty exciting. We saw Terrence Turd Ferguson just being unconscious, not being able to miss from three. He went 7 of 12 from the field, 7 of 10 were from downtown. We saw Jeremy Grant post solid numbers, play a ton of minutes. We saw White and Brent Forbes and Patty Mills all be very viable. Mills, still for some reason, his price has not come up, and he played probably more what his realistic minutes would be. He didn't play a ton. Were kind of subbing him in and out a little bit down the stretch in the overtime, but he's probably the cheap guy that I'm interested in from this game. Let's start down with the Russell Westbrook side. 24 assists in the last game. That was a personal best for him. He, of course, is going to be up there with Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Davis. Potentially, if you want to get crazy, you could force two of those guys into your lineups. Talk to me here a little bit about Westbrook and where you have him on the pantheon of today's options.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you can never really say anything negative about Westbrook. Like he's a really high upside guy. He goes out there and does everything. Should play close to 38 minutes if this game stays competitive throughout. It's not a great matchup. Obviously had a monster game, but the numbers are still the numbers, and San Antonio has been one of the best defenses in the NBA over the last month plus. They've gotten things together since the start of the season. They don't play at a fast pace, so it's not a good matchup. It's still Russell Westbrook, though. Where it gets tough is that Anthony Davis is on this slate in a very good matchup. So if they were going to be similarly owned, then I would give the edge to Davis. If as we get to lock, our projected ownership is starting to push like 3-1 in favor of Davis, then I think you start giving maybe more priority to Russell Westbrook because he certainly can beat Davis a fair percentage of the time. So I'll definitely play the ownership game between him and Davis, but if all things are equal, then I'd still rather get Anthony Davis in my lineups.
Okay. If you are doing this, and this is one of the things that we've kind of talked about in the past, I lucked out for, I guess, lack of a better word, because, well, let me rephrase that. Variance when we lose, our brilliant expertise when we win. So I was brilliant on Thursday night, Adam, because I set some rules in Cruncher that I said, if you play Russell Westbrook, then you have to play one of either DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, and then I did the same thing for Paul George. So I didn't end up with the four of them. That would have been outstanding that I could have, but with the way the salary was working, I couldn't get all four of them. But I wanted to make sure I was at least pairing these guys together at the top end, because I was hoping for a back and forth game. Got beyond my wildest dreams, but between that, I had some combination of the two of them on 70% of my lineup. So I had about 40% Westbrook, and I had about 30% Paul George, and then mixing in DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge turned out to be a very good thing. Is that something you would consider doing today in this? Forget about what happened in the past, but looking forward, are these the type of plays, type of matchups where you want to do something like that?
I probably won't on this slate just because there are enough plays that I like. And I think that guys like DeMar DeRozan and Aldridge and George, and obviously Westbrook, they're fine as standalone plays too. They're all perfectly fine as far as the upside they offer at their price tags. So I don't really feel the need to jam all of those guys together in lineups, because it'll end up knocking down my exposure to other players that I want to get to, or it'll make it so when I do get to those other players, I don't have any lineups that have DeRozan or Westbrook. So I don't plan on doing that. Certainly game stacking is viable, but I wouldn't want to do that across all the lineups that I make.
Okay. Interesting. I have to think about that. I guess we were doing that because it was a 4-game slate on Thursday. But you're right there.
We weren't doing that. You were doing that.
Well, I was. It worked. I won. It's nice to win, like Nuke Lelouch says, because winning better than losing. So there we are. Looking down to some of these secondary guys, perhaps Grant. Really don't want to go to Ferguson, but he would be a pivot away from Royce O'Neal. But compare Ferguson and Royce O'Neal. We have to go with Royce, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, so Royce O'Neal in his current role, they'll play similar minutes, probably a little bit more for O'Neal, but he's not playing alongside Russell Westbrook and Paul George like Ferguson is. O'Neal has not really a ball handling role, because you're going to have Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles on the floor for the entire game, at least one of them. But it's just a bigger role for O'Neal than Ferguson has. So yeah, it's not really that comparable for me.
Okay. Fair enough. Just looking. Dennis Schroeder, 47. We're going to take him 9 times out of 10 over Evan Fournier at the similar price point.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to ownership for sure, but I have Schroeder projected as the better play by a couple of points. So again, all things equal, Schroeder would be the guy that I give the advantage to.
All right. We do have some nice over-unders. This one's checking in as the third highest. It's at 226. We do have New Orleans and Minnesota at 234. Again, we'll talk about that one in just a minute. But we got Karl Anthony Towns availability questions, and then Charlotte coming into Sacramento on a back-to-back. That one is 233. So we should have some nice scoring on this slate. Not quite like last night, but we'll see. I suspect you'll need in the probably 320s to 340s once again to do well in tournaments over on DraftKings. Looking over here to the Spurs, we talked a little bit about this on the Early Bird podcast, but we have Pau Gasol, who did play on a back-to-back, kind of had somewhat of an empty box score, a couple boards, couple assists, no scoring, but he did play 16 minutes on that back-to-back, which was nice to see. Of course, they're keeping his minutes in check because they want to have him around for the playoffs, because apparently Pop has righted things over there in San Antonio, and the team is playing fantastic defense once again with a cast of characters that you would not expect that from. Talk to me a little bit about Pau Gasol, Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we'll have to wait on the starting lineup, but Gasol very surprisingly got the start in this last matchup on the second half of a back-to-back after playing 20 minutes the night before. He came out and played just shy of 16 minutes in that game. So I'm assuming he starts again here. Obviously it's Pop, it's the Spurs. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, I'll assume he starts, and that we can give him like 18 or 20 minutes since they didn't play last night. If that's the case, then it's not that he's super appealing, but on a 6-game slate where there is going to be a lack of good value, and he's 3,100 on DraftKings where you can roster two centers, I think he becomes a pretty appealing value play just because he is still a productive player when he's on the floor. It's not a great matchup, assuming that Steven Adams is able to play for Oklahoma City. It's not a great matchup, but again, $3,100 is just very difficult for a player to really let you down at that price point because of what it allows you to do with your other roster spots. So I would certainly have interest in Gasol here if he's going to if he's going to start.
Okay. That one's going to be ugh. But see, it's the plays that sometimes end up making you the best cash. All right, Patty Mills, yay for me. Bryn Forbes, White, solid, but they're about 20% more. I'm sure I will have all three of them in various lineups. Probably won't double down on any of them in the same lineup, just because they can kind of cut into each other. As we work our way to the backcourt before we get to the stars here, anything amongst that trio, does any one of them particularly stand out for you?
Yeah, Mills is the least attractive to me just because, if you look at that game log, sure, he played 29 minutes, but 10 of those minutes were in overtime. So he got, between 19 and 20 minutes in regulation. And that's really what we've been seeing out of him most nights. So that just doesn't really interest me that much. Like if he gets into a couple of lineups, then whatever. But I have more interest in Forbes. I have more interest in White because I think that you can project Forbes for around 32 minutes. You can project White for at least 32 minutes, maybe more if he's playing well. And even like Marco Bellinelli probably plays similar minutes to Patty Mills, and he's a little bit less expensive. So I'd rank Mills fourth out of that group, Bellinelli third, and then whichever you can fit price wise from White and Forbes. Like White obviously projects higher, but Forbes is $1,000 cheaper.
All right. One of the things, thank you, X Cossack, I wanted to hit on that. Steven Adams, so he hurt his ankle in, I think it was the fourth quarter of the double overtime game. We know he's had ankle issues in the past. They are very, very thin there on the OKC front court because Nerlens Noel, while he is fortunately out of the hospital now after his nasty spill, he is not likely to play for at least a couple weeks, if not longer here after that. It is terrifying incident where he hit his head on the court after leaping high in the air. So if Adams is a no-go, it's going to be Jeremy Grant. I suspect they'll bring somebody up from the G League or I don't know. Do they go with Diallo or some of these other? Do they try to go small? I guess 'cause they don't have anybody else.
Yeah, I mean they don't have to go big against this team, so I expect that you would have Jeremy Grant and Patrick Patterson splitting time at
Okay.
the 5. You would have Paul George playing more at the 4, and then you would get Diallo picking up more minutes.
Okay. So that's kind of the when the music stops, that's where the chairs probably will be. Looking over here at the duo, the LaMarcus Aldridge career high, 50 was it 53, 56 points, quite outstanding. DeMar DeRozan has been just killing it, getting some nice assists, some nice points per minute there. Seems like he is working out well. Pop has done his magic again. He's got those guys not shooting threes. Adam, they're back to their ways of shooting the long twos. But what the hell seems to be working here? What are you looking at with regards to LMA or a double D's?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both appealing. Rudy Gay being out for this one still boosts both of their values. DeMar DeRozan this season has played 760 minutes without Rudy Gay on the floor. He's averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute, 32.4% usage rate, a 29.1% assist percentage. It's a good Oklahoma City defense, but it is also a huge pace-up spot for San Antonio. You should see 36 plus minutes from DeRozan as long as this game's competitive. So I still think that he's a strong play here. He kind of underwhelmed in this last matchup. And I do imagine that he'll see plenty of Paul George defensively, which is not ideal, but the price tag I think is still more than fair for the upside that he brings. So I like him. You got a nice price bump on Aldridge. He was really really underpriced when these two teams faced off last time. Now he's more appropriately priced, but probably still a little bit too cheap. Another guy that you should see around 36 minutes from as long as this game's competitive. And he's averaged just shy of 1.2 fantasy points per minute without Rudy Gay on the floor this year. So both of those guys stand out as really my two favorite plays in this game from other teams.
All right, one guy that is popping here on the crunch that I did here on DraftKings is Davis Bertans. He is coming in at 22%. We are basically projecting him for about 1%. Now I ran this uncapped, or I capped it at 70%, I should say. Nobody hit that, but well, unless Royce O'Neal did. But looking at that, is Bertans somebody that you would look to in this matchup at all for an additional pivot away from Royce O'Neal or salary savings for a double or triple punt to get in two of the superstars?
I mean, I have him projected for like 20 points on DraftKings right now, so I don't imagine I'll get a lot of him. I'm sure I'll get some in 150 lineups, but he's just not someone that I expect to be really a difference maker, especially assuming that Pau Gasol starts. If we get a starting lineup where Aldridge moves to the 5 and Bertans starts, and you can project him for 30 minutes instead of 26, then it becomes a little bit different. But right now it's just kind of 26 probably non-productive minutes.
Okay. And then looking over here on FanDuel, the most popular play coming in the crunch of 100 is Paul George at 44%. We have him projected there currently in our first run at 28%. He's $9,700. Would you, small forward always tricky on FanDuel, would you consider going above the projected, we'll just call it 30% of the field for him on FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, I like George a lot on FanDuel. He very easily grades out as my best small forward on that site. Obviously the most expensive, but just I have him projected for almost 20 points more than anyone else at the position. So the raw points there are appealing. The fact he's less than 10K is appealing. So I think very similarly to how it was the last time these two teams played, it's a lot easier to get to Paul George on FanDuel than on DraftKings.
All right, and then rounding it out here, because of course we like some Yahoo cheapies. We have Bryn Forbes at 12. He's coming in at 20% on my crunch here. We're projecting him for about 22 Yahoo points, and then the highest again on Yahoo it's flipped. It's DeMar DeRozan coming in at 45% here. Yahoo is running a rake-free tournament again today. It's only 5,000 people, so you're definitely going to want to jump in that sooner rather than later. We do have on the front page of Awesemo articles, several free articles, including one breaking down the division games, the division slate here on Saturday and Sunday for Yahoo. That's on the front page. You can check that out. You've got From the Slot. You've got a few other articles. If you're on a budget, There's a couple there. You can check it out. But if you want to see behind the paywall, you want to get the projections, you want to get the full ownership projections, Osmo's rankings for all of the sports, for showdown slates, short slates. It's the guy never sleeps, or he's cloned himself. I'm not sure. I'm going to go with the cloning himself. That seems more likely than someone never sleeping, or more spectacular. But if you use the promo code DFS Strategy, you will get 50% off your first month of any month-long package here at Osmo.com. So you will definitely want to check that out. Go to Osmo.com, click in the upper right, click on the Join tab, select a monthly package, fill in your information, put in the DFS Strategy, all one word, in the promo code, and you will get 50% off. Give us a whirl. You will like it. We've got PGA is up and running with the new projections. So check that out. I'm actually winning on Yahoo right now with our projections. So good times there, Adam. Good times there. Finishing up this game, anything else here for the Thunder or the Spurs?
No, I think that's it from this one.
All right, so let's click over here. Let's see if we have any updated news from the Timberwolves. I'm sure they are not quite yet going through shoot around. We don't have anything updated since yesterday, but courtesy of Roto World, it says that Karl-Anthony Towns went back to the locker room after briefly after rolling his ankle. He did come out and finish the game. It says this is a legitimate concern, and this is the thing, well, of course it is, but this is the thing that surprised me, and I haven't gone and double-checked it, but it says this would be the first NBA game he has missed in his career. Adam, that seems wild. Comment? No? Yay?
Yeah, sorry, it broke up. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
All right. So if he's out, they're saying that Gorgie Jang could be in our lives. Let's assume for a moment here he's out. We do have Derrick Rose dealing with his ankle sprain. He missed about half a dozen games. He did come back last night. This is a back-to-back. He had been saying through about half the games, he was like, I'm going to play tonight, and then he was not playing. I'm going to assume he is going to play tonight, probably something in the 30-minute range would be my guess. So assuming Karl-Anthony Towns is out, is it Taj Gibson? Is it Gorgie Dang? Dario Saric? Does he leap up for you? What do you have assuming Towns is out?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect Gorgie Jang to pick up as many minutes as he can. The rotation, all season long essentially has been Jang playing whatever minutes Towns doesn't. So, I think he would pick up what he can. And then behind him, you would probably have Taj Gibson playing more minutes.
All right.
Which would also lead to Dario Saric playing more minutes.
Okay, so trickle down. If Towns is in, then we got to assume he's a full go. He comes close to the Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook projections, especially when you start to factor in the salary discount that you can get to him on some of the sites. Assuming he's a full go, where is he in your plans this evening?
Yeah, I mean, it's still just tough to really prioritize him with this team fully healthy. The price tag did pretty quickly drop on DraftKings, which is nice. He's back to 9,900. FanDuel, I think it's a little bit easier to get to him anyway, just because their center pricing is tighter than DraftKings is. But on FanDuel, he's 500 less than Jokic. It's tough to get to him. I would still rather play. I guess it's close. Like Vucevic is $1,100 less expensive on DraftKings. I think it's really close between the two of them. He played. It's been hard to gauge his minutes under Ryan Saunders because he played like 24 minutes in the first game due to foul trouble. He played 30 minutes last night, but he had that ankle injury. So it's been tough to gauge. I still think projecting him for around 36 minutes is probably the way to go. And if I do that here, then I do get him with a healthy, like 53 to 55 point projection, depending on the site. So I think Towns is, a very good play. It's a perfectly fine matchup for him. It's just a matter of how easy is he to prioritize over guys like Jokic and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook.
All right, we've got. I did double check here. This is actually the. If he did miss, this would be the first game of his career. He started all 288 games he has played, 3 straight full seasons, and then 42 thus far this season. So, wow, I had not realized that. You don't see quite as many Ironmen like that, especially big guys, because they tend to at some point hurt a foot or a knee or just get beat to shit down there in the paint. That's one of the things that I always was just marveled at when I would go to the games, especially when I would get good seats, is you never see it on TV. But these guys, it's like a full contact sport. Even today, now that they're all just bigger. I mean, I went to a lot of Seattle Supersonic games in the '90s. I had a buddy that worked for the team, so we would get free tickets, or we'd get standing room only, and then he'd kind of let us in, and we could just kind of walk around if we didn't stand in any place too long. But you could get down there closer to the floor, and it was just the hitting. I mean, it was like when you fight your brother or whatever. That's what it's like every time they go into the paint, which you don't see on TV. You're just like elbow, and the grabbing and the clutching and the tugging and the stepping on people's feet and just generally effing with them. It's amazing that more people aren't hurt because you're not wearing anything. You got shorts and you got a jersey on, and that's it. So that was the thing that I marveled at the most. I know you mentioned you're off to the game in Washington here tomorrow. Is that a little birthday present to yourself?
Yeah, actually, my sister got me tickets for either Christmas or my birthday. I don't remember. It's like the same holiday. But yeah, going to the game tomorrow, trying to actually figure out if I'm going down to DC tonight and just staying because the snow's gonna be a pain in the ass in the morning, I think.
Yes, that is a very valid point here. All right, yammered away enough on that one. Looking at the backcourt here, I wanted to point out that Jeff Teague is coming in. I was surprised. We're matching the field here on FanDuel. He's 7,000. So I guess he's appropriately priced, but we're projecting 13%. We got him in the crunch here at 13%. I like him a little bit more on DraftKings, but I think I'm kind of standing alone here. We're projecting him at about 7%. I got him at 10% on my crunch. He's 6,600. So even if Rose is playing, I do like that $6,600 price point. Your thoughts on the Timberwolves backcourt this evening?
It's an appealing matchup because New Orleans plays so fast. They're not a great team defensively. The price tags are just really fair. I mean, Teague played 30 minutes last night. It seems like that is probably where we should be projecting him at. Since the Jimmy Butler trade, he's averaged zero point 0.9 fantasy points per minute. You know, that at 6,600, that even if you factor in the matchup, it just kind of underwhelms you a little bit. Not to say that he can't have a good game, but from a projection standpoint, it's just a little bit too high of a price tag. Rose only played 28 minutes last night. His minutes are a legitimate concern with Tom Thibodeau being gone because we really have no idea how Ryan Saunders plans on using him since he has no allegiance to him from previous teams. So seeing Rose play 28 minutes last night and really just in the first half barely play less than half of that. Really got a lot of second half run, so it's tough to trust him. But even if you project him for 28 minutes at 6,100, it really just becomes nothing more than a tournament play that you're hoping is low owned and has a bigger game than you're projecting him for.
All right, excuse me. There, got the hiccups here. That's not good. Uh-oh. And the link I just dropped is the control room link. Nobody will be able to get to that. I'll clean that one up here in a second. We've got the other side here. Should be a fun one. We know Nikolai Mirotic is most likely going to come off the bench. Probably going to keep him around 20, 25 minutes for the next few games after he missed seemingly forever with his ankle injury. That could impact Julius Randle somewhat. Looks like Eton Moore is likely to miss again. That means Darius Miller will be in our lives. Don't play Darius Miller. Nothing good can come from that. Congratulations. I just allowed Darius Miller to hit a career high 14 points tonight by saying that. Up and down the lineup here, we have Jrue Holiday. We've got Elfrid Payton back. We've got Anthony Davis. Break it down, starting off with the one and only Anthony Davis this evening.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously a good spot for Davis here going against a front court of Karl Anthony Towns, Gorgie Jang, whoever. It's not a bad matchup for Davis at all. Not that matchup really matters for him. I think he should be able to do well here. You can get 38, 40 minutes out of him depending on how the game goes. Mirotic being back isn't great for him just because it's another front court body, and Mirotic at times can be aggressive on the offensive end. But while he's limited to 24 minutes off the bench, I'm not really factoring that in at all for Davis. I don't think it'll have that much of an impact. So, it's still clearly one of the top plays on the slate. I think I prefer him to Westbrook a little bit, assuming that we have, similar ownership on the two of them.
Okay. And that's sort of where I am as well. It's always fun playing Anthony Davis. The pucker factor is high, Adam. You never know if he's going to leave and not come back, or if he's going to pull a Joel Embiid and be wearing flip flops, then put his shoes on, take a few shots, and then sit. That was an interesting one last night. And then Atlanta ended up winning. That was something else. With regards to Jrue Holiday, Elfrid Payton, either of these guys tickle your fancy?
Holiday's price tag's gotten back to where I think he's a perfectly reasonable play. He obviously loses some appeal with Elfrid Payton being back. You have the ball in his hands less, which leads to fewer assists, but he is still playing big minutes. You look at that game against Cleveland, he played 36.1 minutes and he sat the final 2 minutes of the game because it was not a competitive game. So you can still project him for around 38 minutes. You just have to cut his assist percentage a bit to account for Elfrid Payton being on the floor. But the price tag has dropped as well. So he's gotten to where I imagine I'll start getting him in more lineups. I really, for the last couple of weeks, have been getting like zero Jrue Holiday. Now I imagine I'll start getting some, still not necessarily underpriced, but priced much better than he was. As far as Elf goes, I think that the $5,600 price tag on DraftKings is pretty appealing. Obviously, still a limited sample size of him playing with this team at all and him being back from injury, but played 34 minutes in one of the only competitive games since he's been back. In the last game against Cleveland, he only played 28 minutes, but he actually was in foul trouble. He played like 18 minutes in the first half. So I think projecting him for like 32 minutes to 34 minutes is probably actually a pretty good way to go. And at 5,600, that gives us some pretty nice upside.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was going to ask you. So if you're looking at projecting out his points, would you get him up to what 29 to 33 as not quite an upside, but as a higher end of his outcome, kind of your tournament number?
You said his points?
Yeah, his points.
Yeah, I have him just over 30.
Okay. And that's gets right around to the break point there. He's if I goose it just a little bit, he comes in at 23% of my DK lineups when I just ran him with a standard middle of the road projection of 26.5 points. He came in at 3%. So he's going to be a guy right on the fringe, depending on what you want to do with your own adjustments to various projections. That will get more of him in the lineup kind of dramatically, because on DraftKings, usually when you get to that 5.1 points per thousand break point, that's where players start it's kind of like the cutoff generally of where people start coming in and out of your lineup. So just changing things slightly. Oh gosh, I'm going to give him a 10% bump, because he's going to play an extra 3 minutes. All of a sudden that can really make a difference. So you want to keep an eye on things if you're running a lot of lineups there.
He's someone that I normally like. If I have him projected kind of at that break even point, like you're talking about, he's someone that I normally just end up getting in a pretty healthy amount of lineups because he's a volatile player. And when I make my lineups, I factor that in. And so I'll have him, hitting a target score more frequently than a lot of players around him that are less volatile. So I imagine I'll end up with a lot of Payton tonight on DraftKings.
Well, he's right, isn't he? Kind of due for one of his patented triple doubles or approaching one. Especially when it like end of the first half, he's got 11 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, and he ends the game with about 35 fantasy points. But on those games, we've seen him be a slight breaker more than once. And we'll just have to see what happens in this one. If Karl Anthony Towns is in, this game should stay relatively competitive, and it's one of the highest over-unders that we have on the night. New Orleans is just favored at home by a bucket. If Towns is out, I suspect New Orleans will probably be favored by, 6.5 or 7, maybe a little bit more. So, your mileage may vary, but this is one of those really, really interesting and exciting games. Anything else you would like to mention from this contest, or shall we hit the back three here?
I think I forgot to mention Taj Gibson, other than that if Towns is out, he'd get more minutes. It is interesting that Gibson played 30 minutes last night. for Minnesota against Dallas. This is a matchup where I would expect them, if Towns is in, and you're talking about Gibson and Saric splitting the minutes to four, where I would expect Gibson to get the edge again because you're going against a very active front court with Carl Anthony or with Anthony Davis and with Julius Randle, and Dario Saric is an absolute liability on the defensive end. So I would again project Gibson to be in that 28 to 30 minute range and Saric to be on the low end of that split.
All right. That this this is going to be kind of fun tonight. I'm getting excited. We're going to have football on the TV, and then I'm going to be flipping to NBA during the many timeouts of football. One little thing that I've started doing, and yes, because I'm a dork, I close the computer and I let the football game queue up for about 5-10 minutes while I'm watching basketball. Then I jump over and zip through all those commercials and crappy plays because I'm really not vested in any of these teams other than what they're doing for my fantasy. Goodness, Adam. But yeah, was that my out loud voice? Let's just move on here. Let's just move on. Denver at Phoenix. Devin Booker, of course, is the question mark. He is still dealing with back spasms. I don't think he's going to play. Adam and I were talking about this off air, just looking at it from a rest of the season forward and who's going to start tanking and where is everybody sitting at. And Phoenix, there's 3 teams with 10 wins and then Cleveland with 8. At some point, Phoenix is just going to really go for it. Even, I know they've changed things a little bit here. This will be the last year where you can really change the ping pong balls. But, God, Booker is such a talent. He is amazing to watch. He's a lot of fun. He's the great stats, shit team player that we like in DFS. I just have a feeling he's not going to play for a couple more days. Adam, what is your take on reading the tea leaves with regards to that?
Yeah, I'm guessing he doesn't play. There's just no reason for them to rush him back. He's come back kind of early from injuries at other times this season and then gotten re-injured not too long after. So I would imagine they just are kind of more cautious with him. That would make sense. They're not playing for anything. He's, they're the best player, or he's a young star on their team. You have no reason to rush him back. So I'm assuming that he doesn't play.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the Joel Embiid approach. They treated him with kid gloves for a year and a half. It was absolutely worth it. If that is what got him to his relatively solid durability at this point, knocking on wood for Laffy and the other 76ers fans. But I think you'd want to do that if your team's not going anywhere. And that's just kind of where I'm leaning towards Booker. So let's approach that side if he's out. We do have Will Barton and Gary Harris both questionable. Harris and Barton were both out for quite some time with hip injuries. Harris came back, and in the first game back, he strained a hamstring. So he's been bouncing around between questionable, doubtful, out, etc. Today he's questionable. I am iffy as to whether or not he plays. I'm not going to be iffy. But Will Barton got the upgrade. I don't know how much time he's going to play if he's in, but let's assume somehow combined these guys are going to take 25 minutes out of the rotation tonight. Does that impact what you're going to look to with regards to Murray, Torrey Craig, any of these other backcourt pieces that we might want to go to on a 6-game slate?
Yeah, there are a ton of moving parts here because you have Barton and Harris, obviously both questionable. You also have Trey Lyles questionable, which if he's out would open up minutes that probably Hernan Gomez plays at the 4, which could open up minutes for a variety of guys at the 3 and at the 2. So really a lot of moving pieces here. But if we assume that Harris is in and, maybe Barton's in, it does take probably a couple of minutes and usage away from Jamal Murray. Also some playing time away, potentially from some combination of Torrey Craig, Malik Beasley, depending on, Craig, I think would probably start at the 3 here if Harris is back, but I'm not sure. It would make the entire backcourt a mess and much less appealing, though.
I had not thought about Trey Lyles in weeks. In literal weeks. This is now not quite as horrible as me not really thinking about Darren Collison, who's a starter. I had to just double check here to make sure that in fact Lyles was not starting. It's almost like he has taken that Kenneth Faried designation. That those years where Fareed would kind of play, not the is he going to play, is he not going to play. It's just is he going to play 10 minutes or is he going to play 35 minutes? And the answer for Lyles here is he is not about 15 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game, somewhere in that stretch. So, I hadn't even thought about him. The other thing that's wild, well, at least when I looked the other day, Adam, did you know that the Denver Nuggets had the best record in the Western Conference? Got to go see where they are.
I did not.
Yeah. Let's see. They still do. They are one game ahead of the Golden State Warriors. They're two less losses, we should say. So it kind of effectively tied, but one game. So 28-12. Golden State's 28-14. Does it feel like the Nuggets have the third best record in the league behind the Raptors and the Bucks? No, it certainly doesn't. So. Oh God, we sometimes we really should step back and see the forest for the trees here for DFS. It's a whole new world out there. But coming back here, wrapping it up, your guy, one of your faves, Nikolai Jokic, put up a monster game in his last outing. Had a little bit of early foul trouble. We had the clips kind of claw back when he was on the bench, and he, as KGB likes to say, laid down a monster 28 minutes. Are you ready? Sit down, everybody. 58 DraftKings points. Triple-doubled. Took 19 shots. That's the best thing. Here's his shot attempts over his last 4 games. 19, 21, 20, 29. I like that, Adam. I like it a lot. Is he a leverage play for you going away from Anthony Davis, or do you think you want to pair this two together? It's going to be a tall order. That was not intentional. It's going to be a lofty goal. Don't say tall order when you're talking about basketball players, particularly the centers. Horrible. Broadcasting 101. Jeez Louise.
I love the spot for Jokic here. It's obviously a phenomenal matchup. It's I expect across 150 lineups that I'll have plenty of exposure to Jokic, but also to Towns and to Davis and maybe probably to Westbrook. So it's just an awkward price point here with Jokic, where on DraftKings he's almost $1,000 more expensive than Karl Anthony Towns. He's less than $1,000. He's $900 less expensive than Anthony Davis. It's a really just awkward price point where you get similar upside from Towns and you get a higher ceiling, or at least a more frequent ceiling, from Anthony Davis. So, I love the spot, but I just don't know at this point how much of him I'll actually end up with.
All right, so I'm looking here. So Yahoo, he's $47. I'm getting him on 7% of the lineups. On FanDuel, he's 11,000. I'm getting him on 5%. We're projecting him for 15 at this point. And then on DraftKings, where I thought I would get him in my lineups, I'm not. It's just a smattering here. He's coming in at 2% of my lineups. We're projecting him for 7. Adam, 7 feels like a number I'd like to see what I could do to be over on it. I don't think I need to do much more than double it, and just have a nice moment here, as they say. But you're right. This one's going to be tough. What are you projecting him for your tournament? Your higher variance outcomes. You got him for about 56?
Yeah, I have like 57.5 DraftKings.
Okay. And that'll get him up close to that 5 per 1,000 that I was talking about. So right now, just the median projections I'm using have him at 4.7 per 1,000. So he's really not coming in a lot. Interesting here. Would this be a potential game stack for you, looking at some of the cheaper guys over on the Phoenix side here? We're going to assume Booker's out, but you've got Kelly Oubre, you've got Josh Jackson is creeping up, but DeAnthony Melton is nicely priced. You've got Rashawn Holmes, another potential pivot there in the Royce O'Neal class. He's dropped 30 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. He's just making literally all of his shots, 7 of 8, 4 of 4, 2 of 3, 5 of 8. So that could continue because, hey, he doesn't really shoot it outside of the paint very often. But what do you like here amongst our ne'er-do-wells for the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, still some value you can go to on this team. Not that you feel super confident in, but DeAnthony Melton should play 28 to 30 minutes here. He played 24 minutes against Dallas, but he fouled out of that game. You had Elie Kobo back in the rotation, but assuming that Melton would have finished out that fourth quarter if he didn't foul out, he would have ended up at about 31, 32 minutes. So I think projecting him in that 28 to 30-minute range gives you a very reasonable medium projection. And then you can just give the backup minutes to either Jamal Crawford or Elie Okobo. It appears that one of them will play and one of them will not, based on how the last couple of games have gone. But either way, they'd be the backup point guard. Then you get to Kelly Oubre at 4,400, who had a monster game 2 games ago. Not as good against Dallas, but still played 32 and a half minutes. Still, the concern with him, or at least like the risk factor, is that he's not playing a lot of minutes alongside Mikal Bridges. And so we've seen 2 games in a row where Mikal Bridges doesn't play a lot, but that's just not something that I think is necessarily the case every single game. So I think that sooner rather than later, you'll have a game where Mikal Bridges plays well and plays like 34 minutes, and you see Oubre drop to 22 or 24, and it burns a lot of people. So I'm not saying not to project Oubre for more minutes than Bridges. I'm just pointing out that there is a risk factor there, kind of like we saw with the Miami rotation a couple games ago against Boston, where all you can really do is go based on what they've been doing, but you have to at least account for the fact that there is a lot of volatility in this rotation right now when it comes to Kelly Oubre, when it comes to Mikal Bridges. And then DeAndre Ayton in foul trouble against Dallas. You saw Rashawn Holmes have a monster game. They're still splitting 48 minutes. So I still think that projecting Ayton for the bulk of those minutes is the way to go, assuming he can stay out of foul trouble.
All right, and Ayton's had a couple good ones against Denver already this season. Didn't I'm just going from memory here, but didn't have any blocks. Was averaging like 2.5 steals per game and 3.5 fouls per game. So sort of been keeping himself his hands to himself. But that's one of the guys who's nicely talented. If you're playing over there on draft, you can get him in the later rounds because he's someone that has been sliding today. Because you've got Jokic, and you've got Karl Anthony Towns and others. Notes coming up here, courtesy of the interweb. Steven Adams ankle available to play on Saturday, so that is helpful for us.
So also one thing that I just noticed going back to the Oubre rotation conversation, just looking at the rotation in that game against Dallas where Oubre played 32 minutes. So not only did he play the entire fourth quarter while Bridges sat on the bench, but Josh Jackson picked up his third foul with 5 minutes and 10 seconds to go in the second quarter. Kelly Oubre subbed in for him, played 5 minutes and 10 seconds alongside Bridges. So that's 5 minutes that Oubre got that he wouldn't have if Jackson didn't get in foul trouble. So he would have, if you take out Jackson's foul trouble, you would have gotten about 9 first half minutes out of Oubre, which would put him at like 18 if he played the same rotation in the second half. So it just goes back to showing like how volatile his minutes are. He certainly can outperform his price tag if he ends up on the good side of those minutes, but it's just not a guarantee.
All right, burying the lead here, we do want to talk for a second about Paul Millsap. You mentioned on the good side of the minutes. He started the last 3 games, but minutes have been not exactly steady or exciting. I am getting him the most in across the board on all 3 sites in my early crunches, and I've got him at 32 DK points right now, but he's coming in at 20% of my lineup. So we have the field at 3. He's 6,200. I'm hopeful that he plays close to 30 minutes tonight. Now, a lot of this is going to depend on how close Phoenix can keep this one, but I'm hopeful he can get close to 30 minutes. This is a decent matchup for him, but he's someone I think I want to tamp down my expectations on until we see it. But Adam, a lot of times when we see it, it's too late. Do you think he can get over on a $6,200 salary enough that I should worry about trying to make him a part of my plans this evening? Or do I just let the chips fall where they may?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of just let the chips fall where they may. Like, I don't force guys. I don't try and decide like who should be my lineups. I just let my projections do it. But I think projecting Millsap for 30 minutes is probably where he should be. He played, I think, 30 against Miami 2 games ago. Mm-hmm. Last game, he played 23 and a half, but he missed his entire fourth quarter rotation because of the blowout. So I think 30 is about where he should be. If Lyles is out, it solidifies his minutes even more because we've seen them, splitting those power forward minutes all season long. So I think that, like, I have Millsap in 30 minutes on DraftKings projecting for a little over 31 fantasy points, which brings him in, as basically a perfectly neutral play where, I'll have some, but he probably won't be one of my highest owned guys.
Where do you have Plumlee?
14 at center. So I have Jokic at 34.
Right.
So I would give Plumlee the rest of the center minutes, and then looking to see if he didn't play alongside Jokic at all against the Clips. So 14.
Okay. And you and I were messaging during that game, but it was because the early foul troubles where he got in, had a nice turn there, racked up a bunch of points, and then, yeah, okay. All right, 2 more games to go. We've got 2 East Coast teams in the middle of some massive road games or road trips. We've doing West Coast swings, going from San Antonio to Utah to Golden State to Portland. That would be Charlotte and Chicago. Charlotte is on a back-to-back. Let me look at my little notes here. They played in Portland last night. Tonight they're in Sacramento. Monday they're in San Antonio. Last Sunday or Saturday, the fun started in Denver. And then, of course, on last Tuesday they played the Clips. So just know that they're on their West Coast swing. That's going to get them a little bit tired, I would say. Let's talk about Kemba Walker first. We got used to awesome Kemba. Kemba has made the leap. Kemba is a golden god. They're going to need to max him out. Should they trade him? Should they not? And then Kemba Walker has failed to top 40 fantasy points since the calendar flipped to 2019. He's only topped 30 fantasy points once in those games. He's playing about 32 minutes per game over that stretch. Rather disappointing, Adam. We need to see the upside. I need more upside than that at 8,400 on DraftKings. I don't think I will be getting a whole heck of a lot of one Kemba Walker. Where do you stand with Kemba?
Yeah, I think I'll probably get more of him tonight than I have been recently, just because it's such an appealing matchup going against this fast-paced Sacramento team. It is the second half of a back-to-back for Charlotte. They just got absolutely destroyed in Portland. But, 32 minutes in that game for Kemba in 3 quarters. I'm not really concerned about the back-to-back too much. And I think the price tag just leaves him upside, especially on DraftKings where he's, 8,400 and Kyrie's like 8,700. I think it's a more appealing matchup for Kemba. And then the price tag's cheaper as well. So I think that, playing whichever of those guys is cheaper is probably a good way to go. But I would give the tiebreaker to Kemba just because I like the matchup more. I have him projecting very, very well in this spot.
All right. He, of course, is 85 or 84 on DK, 85 on FanDuel. And we shall see. How old do you think he is?
Kemba?
Yeah.
28.
28. Very good. Very good. Looking to his backcourt mate, Nicholas Batum he's been getting minutes. I think that's something. Last night, of course, as you mentioned, just an ass whooping at the hands of Portland. He only played 24 minutes, but he had been coming off a stretch of 33, 36, 37, and he'd started to tick up with his shot attempts, getting a little bit more love there, getting a little bit more on the steals side. He's still tournament only for me, but I'm okay with him at 4,900 in what should be an up-tempo game where there are a lot of passing lanes that can be jumped. Do you like Kemba or anybody else on the backcourt here for the Hornets?
I like Jeremy Lamb. I think that, especially on DraftKings, where he's the same position as Josh Jackson, not to say I don't like Josh Jackson. I think Josh Jackson's a perfectly fine play, but I imagine that Jackson will probably garner more ownership than Jeremy Lamb will. I think that Lamb can play like 33, 34 minutes here in a very appealing spot against Sacramento at basically the same price point, same positions as Jackson. I think that's one spot in tournaments where, if you're running obviously I haven't made my lineups yet. It's, 12, 15, but I would not be surprised at all. And I would guess that it probably happens that when I crunch my lineups and then go through adjusting them for ownership and everything, I end up, with Lamb being higher owned than Josh Jackson, probably.
All right. The we've got on DraftKings, we've got Lamb projected at 20%. He came in at 30% on my crunch there at 5,500. I'm comfortable with that. We have him at 17 on FanDuel. He came in at 25, and then on Yahoo, we're still working on the ownership projections, but he came in at 22% on my crunch of 100. So, oops, I'm sorry, that was the wrong line. Lamb only came in at 14%. That was Walker that came in at 22%. So it looks like there will be some Jeremy Lamb in my life this evening. The mess that is the front court for Charlotte. Anything that we can garner here? We've got some Bismack Biyombo. We've got Guillermo Hernan Gomez. Uninspiring. Marvin Williams, I'm not against. 5,300 on DraftKings. That I think he will end up in some of my lineups. Talk to us about the Charlotte front court, Adam.
Yeah, so I think that it's actually a pretty interesting tournament spot for this front court because of the matchup with Sacramento. If you look at Sacramento's rotation, they're going to have a traditional center out there for all 48 minutes, whether it's Willie Cauley-Stein, Costa Koufos, or Harry Giles. Like there's going to be a center on the floor. You would expect, and so if you look at what Charlotte did last night in a similar situation, it was Biyombo playing the bulk of the minutes, but either Biyombo or Hernan Gomez was out there for every minute until they gave up. So I think that you can probably see something similar here tonight. And with Biyombo at 4,300, it's decent. He's not that high upside of a guy. I'm not really that interested there. But Willie Hernan Gomez at 4,100, coming off 2 games in a row where he's played like 13 minutes. It obviously is risky. It's not something you're doing in cash games. It's not something that your entire night should depend on in tournaments. But getting him in some tournament lineups and being overweight, assuming he's very low owned, is a really high upside way to approach this slate because Willie Cauley Stein's not an excellent offensive player. Like they don't necessarily need Biyombo out there like they did against Nurkic because like Nurkic went nuts yesterday anyway, but Nurkic would absolutely eat Hernan Gomez alive. Cauley Stein's just not that kind of offensive force. So I think there's a better chance that maybe you see some extra Hernan Gomez minutes and he could just go absolutely nuts at 4,100 here.
All right. Excuse me there. This one is for Ian Douglas Street here in chat. He is asking Marvin Williams or Mason Plumlee on Yahoo. Mason is $1 cheaper, but who has more upside? For me, I'm going to go with Marvin Williams because you got to get Plumlee right twice. You got to have him with a good game, and in order to do that, he's going to need minutes, which means Jokic is not getting minutes. So that's one of those that's a little bit tougher. I'm assuming you're following a similar line of thought, Adam.
Yeah, Marvin Williams. The matchup. I mean, the matchup's good for both of them, but it's a faster paced game for Williams. But more than anything, it's what you said. It's the minutes. Plumlee now with Millsap back, and if we assume Lyles is in, and that maybe even other bodies are in for Denver, you're back to where you were earlier this season, where Plumlee essentially is the backup center to Nikola Jokic, and for him to really get minutes, you need Jokic to be in foul trouble, or you need the game to blow out.
All right. And there's I like this from Sean V. Costa Doofus. I don't think he played a single minute in the last game. No, you need weird things to happen for him to get run. He's one of those guys that'll pop, and you're going to look at his game logs, and he's going to have a random 20-minute game where he drops 37 fantasy points because he's a decent big, and it's going to happen on a Sunday short slate or something like that where weird shit happens because they're the Kings. They have too many bigs right now. I mean, Willie Cauley-Stein, if they're going to throw minutes at somebody, we hope it's Harry Giles. We hope it's Bagley. Even Belicia. If they're winning and such, that's the hard thing. But he's one of those guys. He's like Biyombo. I mean, they're solid. They were better 4 years ago when it was a different NBA, but if they get the right matchup and they're going to get minutes, they can produce. So yeah, don't go to Costa Koufos though.
No, I think he was just saying because I said that the Kings would play a center, whether it be Cauley-Stein, Koufos, or Giles, and Koufos didn't play last game, but he has been in the rotation much more than he really should be this season. So the point there was just that if Costa Koufos picks up 6 minutes here, it's still an actual center that's out there.
Yeah. And I I'm a fan of Costa Goofus, and I have chased those games more often than not. I'm not seeing it this year. We need an injury for them to get there. And then let's see, Edward King. Thank you. He says he loves the t-shirt. This is my Mountain Dew t-shirt. It's got a little guy, one of those moonshine guys popping a cork, shooting a hole through his hat, and it says it'll tickle your innards. It's because I had 4 Mountain Dews before 11 o'clock yesterday. I was up riding at 6:30, and they were going down smoothly. Today I've capped myself. I had 2 this morning, and then I'm slowly nursing my last one here. We're topping it off at free cans today because I don't need the jitters. But it is fun every now and then. No, I don't drink Monster or 5 Hour Energy or Red Bull or any of those sorts of things. If you guys like that, go for it. For me, it's Mountain Dew or Diet Pepsi. I like to know what chemicals are going in my body at this point in time. And I think that's why it says tickle your innards, because chemicals are eating away. Adam, anything else here from the Kings front court before we talk about where all of their fantasy goodness is?
Yeah, I think that Carly Stein is an appealing play here. The minutes are concerning, just because with Bagley back, you have all of Harry Giles' minutes coming at center, and that's not great. We saw Carly Stein play 25 minutes against Detroit. We saw Giles play 23. So it's concerning, but this is a Charlotte frontcourt that just has been absolutely wrecked by centers since Cody Zeller went down. Biombo is not particularly imposing. Willie Hernan Gomez is awful on the defensive end. So it's a spot where one of these guys should do really well. I think that you can look to both of them. Harry Giles is 3,700. If he gets 22 to 24 minutes again, he probably blows that away. Cauley Stein, if he plays 30 minutes, he probably does very nicely for a $6,900 price tag. Just don't play them in the same lineup because they certainly cap each other's upside.
Yeah. Capped upside. De'Aaron Fox's minutes trending down a little bit. We've got Bogdanovich, sometimes starting, sometimes still coming off the bench. He's an intriguing option, but Hield solidly in the mix here. Belicia. Would you cap the number of Kings that comes into your lineups tonight at 3? Or do you think your projections will probably take care of that?
Yeah, I would cap them at 3 at most. Like I almost never go to 4 guys, 4 guys from the same team in one lineup, just unless it's a situation like we had with Washington earlier this year, where the entire team was like $1,500 too inexpensive.
Okay. Amongst the backcourt, we've got Fox at 7,900 on DK. Excuse me, Bogdanovich all the way down at 5,900, and then we've got Hield treading in the middle there at 6,500. For me, I think tonight I like Hield, Bogey, and then Fox. Normally Fox is someone I've been going to, but the price has gone up. Minutes are kind of, I don't know that capped is the right word, but they're not really pushing him. I think they want to get him through the whole season healthy. He's the face of the franchise, and this is just his second year here. What are you looking at for the backcourt?
So Fox's minutes have been down, but actually looking at that rotation against Detroit, I'm not as concerned. Like he played 24 minutes in that game, but he picked up his 3rd foul with 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. So that would put him at 30. Then the bench essentially is just subbed in with 3.5 minutes to go in the 4th. So that would be, 33, 34 minutes for Fox. So I think that the minutes being down in some competitive games lately is concerning, but I'm not reading too far into it. I'll still go ahead and project him for 33, 34 minutes here. And so I do still like him. I think that he's just the most productive player out of himself, Hield, and Bogdanovich. I think that he plays as many minutes as any of them. And so I would put him number 1. I would put Hield second, and then I would put Bogdanovich third, because with Shumpert being back, with Yogi Ferrell seemingly still being in the rotation, Bogdanovich's minutes are kind of inconsistent now.
Yogi Ferrell, really, you got it. Oh, I don't. Just when you think that they're rounding into a somewhat respectable franchise, they go and do that and remind us that they are the Kings. Now they are comfortably a game and a half out of the playoffs. They're sitting at an even 21-21, which I'm sure has Vlade and Vivek dancing because they want to try to tank It's going to be a little bit tough with all those teams down at the bottom with half the wins already that the Kings have. But I don't know. I think they should go and just go for it this season. Not like trade and get people, but actually try to win and just accept the fact if you come in as the 8th seed, that would be fun. That I mean, the Kings haven't made the playoffs since like when was the Chris Webber year? Have they made it since then?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That was a long time ago.
It was like forever ago. They're yeesh. Yeah, not good times there in Kingsland. Anything else from this game, or shall we head on to our final game of the night? And then we'll talk a little bit of Thrive, and then we'll get on out of here.
No, I think we can close. We can close it out with the Utah game.
All right, so we've got Chicago. They are on their mega road trip. They started out Wednesday in Portland. Last night they got their ass kicked in Oracle Arena by the Warriors. Flew up to Salt Lake where they're going to take on Utah. Then they come back Tuesday to LA to play Lakers, and then they cap off their road trip Thursday in Denver. I just point this out because I don't want anybody to lose sight of these long West Coast or East Coast swings, because they last a week and a half, almost 2 weeks when they do these trips. Each team generally has they've tried to balance the schedule a little bit more, so each team really only has one big one like that anymore, and they try to keep them in the same time zones and run it out. But on the road for 2 weeks, bouncing around, it's funny because I noticed it a lot more this year. I mean, they're going from Denver to Salt Lake to LA, back to Portland, and then down to Golden State. It's like they're flying even more, though they're staying on the West Coast. So just keep that in mind, because that's where weird stuff can happen. Your stars may not do as well, but you may get some bench guys coming in and doing stuff like, say, Bobby Portis. Let's start there, Adam. Do you want to see if Bobby Portis is going to be freed tonight against the Utah front court?
Yeah, so I mean, Portis played 17 minutes last night. We haven't really seen a big game out of him yet, but he is the kind of guy that I would like to have in lineups the first time it happens, because once it happens, people start to notice it. At 4,500 on DraftKings, I think that's where you can kind of look to do it in tournaments. You know, obviously, if you're playing like 3 max or something, you don't need to go to Bobby Portis, especially in this spot. But he is such a productive player that if he can somehow get to like 24 minutes, he starts to become a good play. So, you know, I won't have a lot of Bobby Portis, but certainly someone you can have some of.
All right, they want us to talk football. Tell you what, you get us to 50 likes and I'll talk football. There you go. Got your work cut out. I said I will. You don't have to, Adam. You don't have to at all. We'll close it out, and I'll just sit here and talk football. Because I wrote 6,000 words for the second straight week on a 4-game slate. I think I can talk this slate till I am blue in the face. Adam. Chris Dunn disappointed the hell out of me last night. That blowout, I went to go flip over to that game because there was still a bunch of time left to see what was going on. And it was like guys I'd literally never heard of closing it out. This is like Chicago's just literally been getting their ass kicked. They're on a 6-game losing streak. They lost by almost 40 last night. They lost by a dozen to Portland. At home, they got their ass kicked by Brooklyn. People, by 17 points. Respectable 3-point loss to Indiana. And then they got their ass kicked by Orlando by almost 30 points. This is not feeling good. But what is feeling good is Chris Dunn. His talent is finally coming up. He's sort of healthy. Last night, we're going to throw that one out. That was just, he had foul trouble. He only played 25 minutes. It was horrible. I'm projecting him for 32 minutes. And I think we can see a like number of fantasy points. I like him in this matchup in what should be, I don't know. It was kind of interesting watching what Utah was doing last night. They had Joe Ingles was, facilitating. Of course, Donovan Mitchell was. But I like Chris Dunn. I want to go back to him tonight. Can you talk me into this? Can you assuage my fears, or do you want to talk me out of Chris Dunn?
I mean, I have him as like a completely neutral play. I do like what I've seen from him since the, Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen, Chris Dunn unit all became healthy. We still have a very small sample size of how they work together. But so far, we've seen Dunn really leading this team in potential assists. He has about a 40% assist percentage since Zach LaVine came back to the lineup, and he's had the ball in his hands a lot. So he's been more appealing from a fantasy standpoint than Zach LaVine has. And if I were to go to anyone from this Chicago team with any sort of regularity, I think it would be done because of the upside he offers, and he's at an appealing price point. It's still just a matchup that scares me, though. I mean, it's still a Jazz team that I expect should be fine defensively. It is still a road game in Utah, um, on a back to back. So I still think there's a lot of risk with Chris Dunn.
Okay. Anybody else from the Bulls? Markkanen, he's kind of my neutral play, as you mentioned. Uh, that's really it. I think it may be a smattering of Wendell Carter Jr. I'm going to go with some Bobby Portis and Chris Dunn. That's probably going to wrap up the Bulls for me.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in the Bulls here.
All right, Donovan Mitchell dropping dimes, shooting the lights out last night. That was amazing. Ingles had, I believe it was a career high 14 rebounds, doing a bunch of the facilitating there. That was good to see. Rudy Gobert, I don't know who's going to slow him down tonight. He could get up there for another 40 fantasy point evening. As you're approaching the Jazz, and we'll get to Royce O'Neal in a minute, but kind of their big three of now that with all the injuries, but of Gobert, Mitchell, and Joe Ingles, rank those guys with their DK pricing.
I would say Gobert, Mitchell, Ingles in that order. Okay. Updating my rates now to try and account for the time that since last year that they've played without any of these other ball handlers on the floor. But you have Mitchell at 1.16 DraftKings points per minute. You have Gobert at 1.1. You have Joe Ingles at 0.84. So I think that they're all good plays. But I'd lean Gobert just because he's a little bit cheaper than Mitchell, and then Ingles. Mitchell just because I think he has the higher ceiling.
All right. Look into some of their scrubs. I'm not going to call Jay Crowder a scrub. Looking at Jay Crowder, 4,900. I'm ambivalent on that one. Derek Favors, 5,100. Yeah, not really exciting. But Royce O'Neal led the team in minutes last night, cracked 40. It seems like he will once again be drawing the start. We got to figure 35 minutes seems like a realistic outcome once again. Are you going back to him? And I think we saw the ceiling game at 32 fantasy points. What are you kind of projecting him? 20, 24 fantasy points tonight?
Yeah, right around there. I mean, I think 36 minutes is a very reasonable projection. He's played 344 minutes since last season without any of Hood, Burks, Neto, Exum, or Rubio on the floor. He's averaged 0.73 DraftKings points per minute. He's not a high usage guy, but he does, when he gets run, he just does a lot of things when he's out there. He'll pick up enough assists, he'll pick up enough rebounds, and then he'll score a little bit. So as long as he's cheap and playing that many minutes, you get a guy who normally isn't going to let you down. Normally he's not going to 10x his salary, but it's a guy that in cash games for sure, and on FanDuel especially, where he's a minimum price small forward, but he's just a guy that he holds your lineups together. He probably won't kill you. Most nights he won't do what he did last night. And where you really want to pay attention though is projected ownership, because he was only 15% owned last night. That was a perfectly reasonable ownership percentage to be playing him at. But just throwing out a number, because I don't have our projections in front of me right now, if he were to be, let's say, 40% owned tonight, it's someone that if you're underweight on that, you're just going to make money over time, because he's not the kind of guy that normally contributes much value to that spot in your lineup. It's more that his salary is just freeing up other players.
All right. Interestingly enough, we only have him at just about 10% on DraftKings. We've got him at 22 on FanDuel. FanDuel, he is 3,500. You can drop him. That makes a lot of sense. He fills one of those pesky small forward spots. And then on DraftKings, 3,900. I still like him. He was the second highest owned player that on my crunch of 100 that I ran. He is at 46%. I think I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable if he stays around. I suspect he'll get up to about 15 again, maybe 20 on DraftKings. I'm comfortable going like half again of that. If he gets over 25, then I'm just going to match the field on that. I don't want to really make a stand here, just because I think last night again was his high point, and I don't see us getting there, and I don't know that we'll need him to win tournaments tonight.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at the projections I have right now, and factoring in DraftKings price, I have Gobert as my top guy from the Jazz, then Mitchell, then O'Neal, then Ingles, and then like favors Crowder.
Yes. Bobby Fisk says in chat, seems like you win when the scrubs do well. Yes, but the problem is the scrubs are many and the ones that do well are few. So it's like, oh, I thought about that guy. Yeah, you think about all the scrubs, and then it's confirmation bias when they start to do well. And you're like, oh, I should have had him. Just be careful there. Be careful.
Well, yeah, I mean, like stars and scrubs lineups give you the most upside.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting the right scrubs because most people who are really cheap are that cheap for a reason. And just because they're getting more minutes, it doesn't mean they're going to suddenly be super productive players. So what you kind of end up wanting to do is, and it's where the ownership comes in, Royce O'Neal, if he were to start getting really, really, really high ownership, you have to remember that he's still a 0.7 fantasy point per minute player, and a lot of his outcomes are going to be, in that 23 to 24 fantasy point range, where it's a good point per dollar salary, but it doesn't like really boost your lineup. And so having lower owned punt plays that maybe can beat that 24 points is where you start to get an edge, and that's where the ownership comes in. But yeah, like stars and scrubs, it does give you more upside because whatever obviously stars have just higher ceilings than everyone, and being able to get to them gives your lineup more upside.
Yep. Well said. Well said. For those of you interested in a little bit of football, we've got in the can already. We have the On the Contrary with Evan Silva, Osimo, Alex Baker, and then Chris Spags. That's on the YouTube channel already. You want to get in some college basketball wagering, you get the Osmo Odds show. Ben Rasa breaks that down. They also cover props for the NFL. You got 4 hours until divisional weekend kicks off. We've got the free Yahoo article on the front page breaking that down. We've got free articles for the single game showdown slates for both Saturday Night Football and Sunday Night Football. Those are posted. And then we've got another 3 or 4 articles there, summer premium, breaking down other matchups and game by game stuff. You got Chris Baggs writing some stuff. Nolan Kelly wrote a nice piece. Ben Rasa wrote a piece. I got a couple in there myself. So check those out. We're going to go over here to Thrive. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to do about 3. Let's do 3 of these, Adam, and then we can get on out of here. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, but if you go to the link here, you can download the app on your phone. It's bit.ly/Osimo, and that'll take you to their site where they have the download to put it on your mobile device. Once you make your deposit, your first deposit, they'll match your first 10. If you deposit 100, they'll give you 20. If you deposit 200, they'll give you 50. That's cash in the barrel, available for immediate use. You can't withdraw it. You got to play it, but it'll play that cash first. So pretty good deal over there. What they do is they give you 20 questions. You select 10 of them, and it's props. So they're going to be weighted a little bit like you would expect. 80 on one side, 120 on the other, 105, 95, etc. If you get it correct, you get those points. So the more likely an outcome is, the less points that will be there. And then you pick 10 of the 20 questions, and that becomes your score. So there's some game theory involved. What are other people going to pick? Do you want to try to leverage against them? Do you want to throw some of the, you have a lot of choices here. A lot of them they do a good job at this. So it makes you think. They're kind of right down splitting the middle on a lot of these things. So Adam, let's do a couple. Do they have football up today?
Yeah, football today.
All right, let me open my football projections and let's go for it.
All right, first one we got is Andrew Luck, over under 316.5 passing yards, 105 points for the under, 95 for the over.
I will take the over because the Kansas City defense, wait for it, basically made the opposing quarterback into the third best quarterback every week this season.
Yeah, I'll take the under here on Luck. The projections I'm looking at have him projected under. I don't think Kansas City's defense is as bad as people will give it credit for. So with more points to the under, I'll take the under.
The projections I'm looking at are 307, but I am fine taking the over because I think they're going to be throwing it a little bit more as long as Kansas City can move the ball and keep it close or get ahead. It's all going to come down to Andrew Luck today.
All right, Pat Mahomes, 340.5 total passing yards, 110 points for the over.
Under. I will take the under on that.
Yeah, the projections I'm looking at have him under, but I'll take the over because it's 110 points and because betting the under on Pat Mahomes just seems like sacrilegious.
Over under on Pat Mahomes 1/2 no look passes.
Over.
Like, you got to go the over, right? He's just done some crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. He
All
is a
right.
wizard.
Here's a good one. 73 and a half total rushing plus receiving yards for Damian Williams.
I'm gonna take the over because pushing the chips in, he's gonna be on almost every team that I have. He's like perfectly in the middle of DraftKings and Yahoo pricing, and I have looked at him. I've really liked him over the last couple games. Spencer Ware is going to take the field and practice, and warm up, but is unlikely to play. That's already come out, and we know that they've signed Williams. They signed him to a 2-year extension for $8 million. It's incentive laden, which as it should be, because starting this season, this guy was like the number 4 running back for them, but he's turned out to be capable in the receiving game. He's had some solid runs, and I think he's going to be a large part of things. And as the defense is going to be busy going after Kelsey, Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill, I really like Williams today, so I'm taking the over.
Yeah,
and I'm getting football talk in for those that wanted the football talk, Adam. There you go, subtly.
Yeah, I got the over too.
All right, last one.
All right, going to the Dallas game. Jared Goff over under 290 and a half passing yards, 115 points for the under.
I will take the under. I think Todd Gurley is healthy enough, and Dallas will run the ball enough. The clock's going to move quickly. I don't see him topping 300. He is, I think, topped 225 once in his last 4 games. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I got the under on Goff here too.
All right. Sean McVay is going to put him in a spot to succeed, but I don't know that he'll have to put his foot on the gas. So that's kind of my thoughts there. Any final things before we get on out of here, Adam?
I'll have the deep dive article out sometime in the next few hours on awesemo.com.
All right, throw us a like here. We didn't get to 50, but I did give you guys a little bit of football talk. You can follow Adam at ShipMyMoney DFS. I'm at EMACDFS, and of course, it is awesemo_.com. Use the promo code DFS Strategy for 50% off any 1-month package on Awesemo. That includes Fantasy Cruncher. With that, gamers, good luck.